What's up, Gator Nation? Welcome into the latest Gators Online Podcast. Zach Abolverdi joined to my left by Nick Torre, and also our special guest for this week, former Florida offensive lineman Shannon Snell. And we're going to talk football and food. I mean, two of our favorite things, right?
Maybe more food than football.
Yeah,
and they go hand in hand. So we're probably going to each one, right?
Yeah, we'll talk about, obviously, what he's been up to with the football team. We'll get into some recruiting talk as well, and also get the latest on Nick's keeping up with his baseball team and all the roster movements there. So, but let's jump into Shannon. Appreciate you joining us, man.
I appreciate you guys having me, man. I always have fun. You guys know a lot about everything. Trying to get a hold of you two is always tough, so I'm happy to be here with y'all, man.
No, absolutely, man. We've been seeing some of the things that have been happening with the football team, obviously on the food front, kind of really from the get-go. Before we talk about your initiatives kind of lately with the players, take us through your introduction to this new staff, your early impressions of them, and then maybe how quickly they realized that they needed some relationship ribs in their program.
You know, it's funny because it's always this unsurety about when a new staff comes in, what are they going to be, how they're going to accept you to the program, especially a lot of the former players, because I don't think, a lot of them can't speak intelligently about the program because they've never been here, right? Yeah. They want to bring former guys back around. So when I first met Coach Napier, I was just passing by the stadium and we were feeding him, and he came down and he already knew my name, which was the coolest thing. I don't know, we're talking about a guy that's very cerebral, that does his homework, that does a lot. He thinks before he makes any single action, and getting to know former people, the people that have been around the program, people that have a vested interest in seeing the Florida Gators be great. I think that's awesome. I think that was one of his first initiatives, and hiring all these great coaches. Yeah. Right? He doesn't want to be a guy, in my opinion, that does everything. Right? We've seen that in the past where we have a guy that has his hand in everything, and it just didn't go well. But for him, he's hired so many great minds, whether it be former college coaches, NFL coaches, NFL talent guys, guys that really can push the issue, push the program. I think that was great, and for all intents and purposes, I am excited about the future for him, because I think this is the first time that we've had a coach that's been able to think of this like chess and not like checkers, right? That's thinking about the end game, the move 3 years from now. What does the Florida Gator program look like? And I think for all the moves that he's made, for everybody he's hired, for everything he's said, everything he's done what he said, and it's been an encouraging thing. And just being around the program as I have been, it's really fun to see how this the next couple of years is going to play out.
Now, obviously, some of the early things that we heard were about the parking and about the food.
Sure.
What was your reaction as a former player to the parking situation being resolved?
Jealousy, I guess. I mean, I can't tell you how many tickets I got on campus because we had to park in different spots and listen, I don't think there should be any favoritism as, where athletes park. I mean, everybody has those same issues, but, when you legitimately have to walk a couple of miles just to get to the stadium to play or to practice and be tired and then walk home.
Or study.
Or study. I think there should be some special privileges. So when he addressed that, the first and foremost, you could tell he was listening to his guys. He brought his guys in the room and say, hey, what's your biggest issues? The biggest issues was the parking and the food. It's like, hey, we're not getting fed correctly, which I can honestly say, yeah, they're right. And the parking was always a problem.
Yeah.
He addressed it, and he had to get those guys to have buy-in, because I said at the end of the day, is that he's not winning football games without those players. And he has to get some sort of buy-in. And that buy-in is like, hey, are you listening to us? I think that's been a thing in the past where these players were just kind of like, we don't have our voices heard. Mm-hmm. And the first thing he does, his first action coming into the building was changing the two things that they gripe about the most. I think that creates a level of trust, which he really need, their level of honesty. And that gets these guys really to buy into the vision that he's trying to put forth at the University of Florida.
That's the first loss UF Taps has ever taken.
Yes.
Ever.
They've never lost. And then Billy comes in and is like, hey, by the way, you're not giving these tickets anymore. And they were like, wait,
that was, you know what? It was jealousy, but I was so proud that he did that because of the fact of any football player or athlete that has gone through the University of Florida has dealt with these parking issues.
I could wallpaper a room in my house with yellow envelopes.
Yeah, listen, as reporters, we get stuck with it too.
Guys, we had guys that knew how to take boots off of cars because they had gotten so many. So
allegedly,
yeah, maybe I don't know. So
possibly, you mentioned the food as well. I guess from your standpoint, especially being a guy in your industry, I guess what was that like to see that change come about and to see a coach and an administration that kind of understood the importance of kind of making that investment?
I think it's great. You think about, I mean, food is a big part of what they do, what you fuel your body with, what you put down, because ultimately that's going to affect your performance, whether it be in the weight room or those Saturdays. So, these guys, I mean, for all the money that comes into the University of Florida, for all the things that these guys do for this program, the last thing they need to worry about is, hey, having good food to eat.
Yeah.
You have to fuel your body with great food so you can put out great performances. And I think, Kelsey Gomes, who's the dietitian, she is.
The players tweet about her.
Hey, let me tell you something. She's on point from everything she's done. She comes up with new ideas. She makes sure these guys are eating well on the weekends, during the week, making sure they even have like a goal chart that each one of them compete against each other and make sure that they're getting the right nutrition. Yeah. I've never seen that before.
The nutrition athlete of the week.
Yeah, okay? Exactly. And let me tell you something. Every person that competes at this kind of level, they're always wanting to win. It's never about, hey, I'm just trying to, compete, or I'm just trying to get a second place trophy. You want to win. So each one of these guys are trying to beat each other, trying to say, hey, did I get all my greens in this week? Did I get all my macros or all my protein? Yeah. These guys are competing. And I think they created a really healthy environment of competition, making sure that they're eating right and they're seeing these incredible gains that they're doing in the weight room and now on the football field.
And for them to get a team meal Monday through Friday, what was it like when you were a player? Is that
how much different is it? Because it's like not less than a decade that the NCAA even allowed like more stuff. Like, hey, you can get an extra sandwich, an extra peanut butter and jelly.
Right.
Back when you were there, like you couldn't get fruit snacks.
No, you think about it. I mean, there's one thing we talk about the NIL and all that stuff, and there's this level of stuff that you need as an athlete to survive, right? Mm-hmm. And food is obviously the highest level. And it was so regulated that it was just like, generally we couldn't have too many meals brought in from outside vendors. Wow. So I work for Sonny's Barbecue, right? And generally they have an in-house vendor who they earmark on campus that they bring in all the stuff. They do special stuff for. They go their personal needs. When back in the day, our only needs were we got to go to Gator Dining or Gator Corner or whatever that is. And we got so much on our Gator One ID. That was a problem because that was gone pretty quickly. Not to mention Gator Dining was they catered to all the regular students as well.
Yeah, it wasn't specialized for
right.
The
I mean, there's different needs and there's different things for each individual player. Not to mention, like, it's way different from the average student.
The 5'10", 106-pound engineering student might eat differently than the 6'7".
Right. Like if you have fried steak in there or fried chicken in there, the average athlete shouldn't be eating that all the time, just like the regular student, because when they go to practice, it's not going to be a great day for them, right?
Yeah.
So I think that over time, they've done a really great job of trying to say, hey, look, we need to make sure that these athletes are properly fed. Even the new football house or the new athlete house that they're building on campus is going to have so many state-of-the-art things in there. And I think that's great because honestly, if you want to perform at the highest level, like the Ohio States and like the Clemsons and all this other stuff, you have to feed them right, and you have to make sure that they have ample enough nutrition to get them right on the field.
Now, they've took it a next step this offseason. It's not just enough to feed these guys every day. Now they want them to start cooking their own meats. Yeah. And you were kind of part of an initiative with Kelsey to kind of give these guys something to do on the weekends. Talk about how that came about, and I'm sure your excitement to be able to teach these guys this valuable life lesson.
Yeah, well, Kelsey called me and she was like, they're always doing something innovative, right? Which one thing, whether it be inside, operations of football, whether it be whatever, whether it be in the nutrition department, they're doing something innovative. So the innovative thing that she decided, she's like, hey, I need to teach these guys life lessons. Like we've seen on, Twitter and on social media, how they're buying these guys suits from Men's Warehouse, right? Yeah. That's super important because those suits they're going to use, whether they decide to go on with football or not, they're going to use those suits, whether it be on their job interview or whatever it's going to be. Yeah. They're going to remember that stuff, right? They're teaching these guys life lessons. And one of the biggest life lessons that I struggled with when I got out of college was I didn't know how to cook anything. I knew how to cook zero. Kind of weird now that I cook everything all the time, right? It kind of comes back around. But she contacted me and said, look, on the weekends, we don't really have these guys. We're not doing a whole lot with them. We feed them Monday through Friday. But we want to make sure that they're eating well on the weekends. And one of the biggest complaints that they had was, we don't know how to make like chicken good. We don't know, like we know we can go to the store and grab a steak, but I want it like we're sitting in Spurrier, right? I want it like that, right? I don't want to have to go out and blow 50, 60, $70, especially with food prices going up, right? So what can we get that we can cook on a grill or we can cook in our oven or something that we can make great. So that's when Kelsey interjected herself. She called me and said, hey, look, can you teach these guys about seasoning? Can you teach them about how to cook? So she set up a series of classes, like 3 weeks in a row, right?
Let's go.
So we were out there 2 weeks ago. We were out there last week. We were out there, and we're going to be doing something with them this week about how just cooking simple products and making them good, how to season your own meats, cooking temperatures. This has been like, it's honestly been like one of the most rewarding things I've done with the Gators because they were all in. I thought it was going to, the first time I went out there, I was like, okay, there's going to be 1 or 2 guys that want to deal with raw meat and want to touch it. You know, Cyrus Torrance, like, I got to actually know him a little bit, and him and his grandmother used to like grill back at home in Mississippi, and he knew what he was doing on the grill, which was like totally dope. I was like, man, you like become my new favorite person.
Yeah.
But a lot of these guys were just wanted the knowledge, and all of them were so excited. Some of them made some really good stuff, like some of the stuff I would probably make in a restaurant. And, you know, shout out to Kelsey for doing this kind of stuff because let me tell you, it's a life skill that these guys are going to remember. They know they have to cook chicken to 165 degrees.
Yeah.
It's stuck in their head so that when they leave college, if they have to go get their own apartment or whatever and say, hey, what am I going to eat tonight? I want some chicken. It's something that they learn. It's a life skill that they're going to use for the rest of their life. And that's the dopest thing that Kelsey and that program could have done for them.
They're not going to have to get salmonella to learn how
exactly,
how
right?
Chicken.
Because when you get that one time, you're not eating chicken anymore for a long, long time after that.
Right. And then you said that you felt like this was maybe the favorite thing that you've done with this team since you've been a former player. How has this interaction been different versus like when you've come around and you've supplied the food or you've just been there at events? Now you're actually teaching these guys and getting to interact with them that way.
Yeah, I think it's, we've gotten as the players have came and gone and the new ones have came in, we've gotten to know each other over time because we do a lot with the University of Florida, but this has become a little bit more interpersonal. This has become a little bit more understanding who the person is instead of just the athlete, right? And I think this is so cool because even for some of my team, the people that come with me that do these events is that they realize that these are real guys. They're youngsters, but they're learning. They want to learn these life skills. They want to learn these life lessons. And it gives me the chance to talk to them on a more personal level about, hey, what are your likes other than football or blocking a guy on a zone gap or taking the ball out there on a pick six, right? That's the stuff that we see on Saturdays that they probably generally don't want to talk about. You know, when you're over a grill, when you're doing something fun, when you're cooking, when you're just kind of chilling, it gives you the opportunity to kind of pour into them a little bit. And they ask you about like your previous experiences. Like they all kind of maybe figured I played football, but some of them didn't know you played at Florida.
Yeah.
You know, it's great because then we could chop it up. We could talk a little bit and that's fun, man. That's the times that we talk about that we can kind of sit over and breaking bread over a barbecue. That's like the ultimate setting for it. And it's really fun to do that. It's really fun to get to know a lot of them, especially with this transition with the coaching staff.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of them are still unsure because, I mean, until you actually go through a full season of football, you don't really know what you're getting.
Yeah.
Right? You go through spring. Spring is different, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, like I said, these guys, these coaches are teaching them how to be pros right now, which is great because when pro day comes, it already comes secondary, right?
Yeah.
The nutrition staff, they're teaching them how to fuel their bodies because when they walk away from Florida and she's not there, you already know. You're going to be by yourself. If you're sitting in your hotel room or in your house alone, you already know this stuff. So I'm really sold on what the staff and how they're building men. That's the most important part.
Who are some of the best? You mentioned Osiris. Who are some of the other best cooks?
You know, funny that Naquan Wright is like he cut out beef out of his diet, right? He's more of a chicken and fish guy.
Okay.
And he and I he was the one I kind of like, we stood together for about 30 minutes going over how to cook salmon and chicken wings and stuff, what it means, glazes and marinade. Let me tell you something. If you're looking for somebody that's going to blow it up this season, I mean, he is one guy that's really taking care of his body. In the weight room, I heard he's doing really well. He is one guy that's really adapting to the that Gator standard that we really look forward to.
Sure.
He is adapting to that. He's really making himself into his body into like a physical specimen, and he's really got the mindset of him. This is his year. This is his year that he's going to blow it up.
Yeah. His maturity has always been off the charts.
It's unreal. I'm impressed with him. I wouldn't be surprised to see him overpass what Damian Pierce did last year.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, we do got to talk some football before we let you go. I want to get your impression of the new offensive line coaches and more specifically the fact that Florida is the only team in the country that has 2 offensive line coaches and how unique that is.
Well, you talk Rob Sale. I mean, I'm sold on him. I was a fan of him. He did wonders with the New York Giants, right? Their offensive line. I mean, it was the only good part of their team. No shot to them, but it was the only good part of their team. He's got that NFL pedigree. Anybody that's ever talked about him, that's worked with him, will tell you like he is a very smart guy. He gets the most out of his players. When I met him, I was automatically sold. And even if you ask some of the offensive line, the current offensive linemen, it takes him a little bit to get used to an offensive line coach. He's not the guy that's going to yell in your face or that's going to, spit flying everywhere.
Yeah.
He's going to be
very mic'd up in practice. He was pretty animated.
He was, but he's not. He's very constant. He's very kind of. He'll pull it back. He'll get loud when he needs to, and when he needs to pull it back, he will. And I like that. A coach that's kind of versatile on that because not everybody can be coached the same way. It's just not what it's going to be, right? And you got Darnell Stapleton, who I'm like seriously. He played with Max Starks, who obviously we played together at Florida.
Yeah.
They played together in Pittsburgh, so he's got a wealth of talent. You saw what he did at U of L when he was out there, and he took some really decent players and made them great. I mean, they really, really like him. And we're talking about a wealth of NFL guys, right?
Yeah.
They brought Cheston Blackshear back as a Cheston was the GA when I was here, so I firmly believe in him. So you got 3 guys in that room that have a lot of experience, whether it be at the Power 5 experience. You got guys at the NFL experience. Like you talk about what Napier did, I'm super excited because the offensive line is where it's going to start. Yeah. I mean, if you don't have a great offensive line, we've seen this over the course of the last 5, 6, 7 years, that if you don't have a great offensive line, you are not in the game, especially in the SEC, right? SEC, everybody has playmakers, but the speed of the line, the speed on the edges, if you can't block those guys, then you're out of the game. So I think they got the guys. I think they got the guys to coach them up. It's just what they do with them at this point.
What are your expectations for this team this year? And as they try to kind of, get used to this new staff and obviously kind of work out the kinks from what was obviously a struggling season last year?
So I think of this 2 ways, right? I think the worst thing that could have happened to us back in 2018 was Dan Mullen going 10-3, right? That is a really good record out the gate.
Yeah.
Right? He had, pieces. We didn't know what he was. We didn't know what he was going to be, but he kind of he overstrided there, right? I thought he was going to be an 8-7 something, or 8-6, or 8-5, whatever it is.
Especially when he lost to Kentucky.
You think about that.
That thing though was crazy because we at the time, like every coach gets asked, "Hey, the streak," and he said on Monday, he was like, "Well, at some point it's going to end," and we're all like, "No, it's not."
Yeah. And
then you lose that first one, you're like, "Oh." He was right. It did end.
Right. At that point, but he ran off a bunch of them at the end of the season with a guy at quarterback who probably was,
probably didn't even want to see him.
Yeah, they didn't want to see him, right? So regardless, that was the worst thing that could have happened to us because now the expectation when year 1 comes for a new coach, a guy that's really
he had success.
Exactly.
Championship game.
Exactly. So you're thinking about this, and every Gator fan is thinking about, well, what about the previous coaches? I think we're in a better position because we're now preparing ourselves for the future. Mm-hmm. I don't think we left ourselves in great position with player-wise. I think we're great in the first teams, but the second team, we need some depth. We need some guys that are going to step up. So I think my expectation is I'm just wanting to see development. I want to see these guys playing well. I want to see us in games. I don't want to be blown out. I don't want to be blown out by the University of Georgia. That's not fun to see, right? That's not fun to hear from my friends. But at the end of the day, it's just I want to see progression. Yeah, I want to see a bowl game. A bowl game should be in the future. A bowl game should be the bare bottom minimum for the University of Florida. But I'm not expecting to win a championship in year 1. Yeah. If that's the expectation, Larry Coker was a guy that did it, right? He did his thing. And, did Ryan Day do it? Yeah. Okay, but they were loaded, right? They were very
inherited a great situation.
Exactly my point. We're not in that situation right now. And it would be fair to say we got to give them a couple of years, 2-3 years to see what we really got. Give them a couple recruiting cycles. Let them get his guys in here. So I'm expecting a bowl game this year. I'm expecting them to compete and have a bowl game and just get better every game. Sure. Win the games that you're supposed to win. Be competitive in the games that you're going to be in with the LSUs and the Georgias. And, at the end of the day, let's see what it plays out to be.
Do you think so? I was always like, you need to get a new coach 4 years, so they can get a full 4-year cycle. Mm-hmm. Do you think the transfer portal changes that now? The transfer portal changes that, and so does the recent success of a Kirby Smart and some of those guys. Like if you're he's winning year 1, year 2, year 3, he's having better and better records. And finally, he's kicked Georgia out of the 1980s, so he's got his championship. Yeah. I think when that stuff happens, and they're in the same division in their conference, you're compared to those kind of guys. It's like, hey, whether it's fair or not.
Yeah, it's just like in the NIL has changed the entire game. We all know that. It's a game that, Kirby Smart didn't have to deal with when he was first coming in, or, the Ryan Days, or, anybody that's had that kind of success, because now, you got Jackson State pulling in some of these top recruits, some of these guys that probably should have gone to an Alabama or,
State.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of stuff is happening. So at the end of the day, let's wait a little bit. Let's see how the landscape plays out. Let's see what he does in the recruiting field, because that's going to be a big portion, and what he does in the portal, because that's going to be a big portion of what happens, what his legacy is going to bring over the next couple of years. I'm going to reserve judgment. I know I'm a fan. I know I'm kind of a supporter, so I want to see him do well. And I think we got the right guy in charge. So I think that's where it kind of lays right now.
And then final question for you, Shannon, and I know you've been outspoken about this a lot on Twitter, just when you feel like I need to address the fans or maybe speak to the pulse of the fan base.
Sure.
I asked Demetric Jackson, former Gator, yesterday at the 7-on-7 camp about Napier, and he said, I don't think it's so much about him as it is the Gator faithful.
Yeah.
And, these guys and these fans giving him time to build this thing. And I know time is not maybe the word that people want to say, but you've seen so many regimes that have come through here, have had success, and then it just, doesn't work out. What do you feel like has been the common denominator there? What is it going to take for this program to kind of find that consistency and stability that it's really lacked since the Spurrier era?
It's probably since the Meyer era, right?
Yeah.
It's been those unrealistic expectations. Like, you got to understand that back in the day, the national championship game, or then the BCS, then it always passed through the state of Florida, right? Whether it was Miami, whether it was Florida, whether it was Florida State. Times have changed a little bit, right? The paradigm has shifted to the Georgias, to the Ohio States, to other Alabamas. It's shifted, right? At this point in time, I understand everybody wants to be great because we want to remember what Steve Spurrier did. We want to remember what Urban Meyer did. And there was flashes in the pans of, Jim McElwain taking us to SEC East or SEC title games, or twice, right? Or with what Mullen did, taking us to one a couple years ago. They got to build a program. You got to have consistency, right? Consistency involves having some of the same pieces in place for a longer period of time. There were some things that went haywire last year, and everybody's always saying, hey, I live for the moment. Living for the moment is like, I only remember the here and now. For us Gator fans, and I'm including myself, is we can't live for the moment. We have to realize that this is a chess game. This is a chess. We have to start looking for the next couple of years, because let's say, Napier has a bad year, and they're like, oh, we need to get rid of him. We're going to put ourselves in the same position that we were a couple years ago after Mullen's, after his season that he went, to the SEC title game. The year after, he's gone.
Yeah.
Right? We can't put ourselves in a position of, hey, every year, if we're not successful, then we need to kick the coach out and find somebody else.
Yeah.
Because think about the coaching landscape. Who's going to want to take a job where the fan base or the boosters or anybody else that supports the program is saying, hey, if you
want
have
a bad year.
Yeah, think about your family. Think about the people that are going to follow you, or the coaches or stuff. I don't want to join your staff because I only got a 1-year shelf life at Florida if I don't win. Yeah. I've seen a lot of buyout money, so
me personally, I might be like, yeah, I'll go to Florida. It'd be terrible.
Oh, okay, yeah.
They'll pay me a bunch of money to stop.
But you know just as much as I do. At some point, that buyout money is going to be like, okay, well, let's just start dropping that number down, because I know just as much. And I'm not saying Strickland would do this, but I'm just saying I know at some point that there's a shelf life on these Florida coaches, because there's just like our fan base or our supporters are just very passionate. I'm not going to say they're rabid, but they're very passionate about wanting to win again. And coming from where you were with Steve Spurrier, let's forget the Ron Zook years, okay? From Spurrier, then you went to, obviously Urban. Those were years that were just, as recent people's recent memory, those were great years, right? Urban winning a couple of them, Steve winning one, and all the SEC title games they went to. Like, we want to get back there. Our only SEC title game, was the McElwain ones where we were severely outmatched.
Yeah.
Right. And then the one where we play Alabama again, and it was a shootout. Yeah. We lose it. It was just like, man, it was like always the bridesmaid, never the bride. We want to be the bride. We have to have some consistency, right? Yeah. So, and I think that's where we need to be at.
I was looking at it yesterday. Florida's had Billy Napier is the 4th coach that Florida's had since Mark Stoops was hired at Kentucky.
That puts it in perspective right there.
But take a look at what Mark Stoops has done with Kentucky.
He's had a chance to build and build a culture and build a program. And again, the expectations in Kentucky are different.
Yeah.
You can go 6-6 Kentucky, and they're like, hey, cool, Outback Bowl, that's awesome. Fantastic. You go to 2 Outback Bowls, Ron Zook goes to a couple Outback Bowls, and he's like, hey, man, you got to find a new job.
But Nick, think about it now. If Mark Stoops is going, if he has a losing record, he's on the hot seat because of what he built.
Yeah.
Right? Because of the consistency he built. He had really good players come through there. He had guys that probably never even considered Kentucky, now putting them on the map. Right? Yeah. Let's forget about the NIL. Just putting them on the map because of what they've done. They're playing on New Year's Day. Yeah, I'd love to do that. There's a lot of schools. There's 50, 60 schools around the country that aren't playing at all.
Yeah.
And Kentucky's one of those top tier, but that's that consistency he built at the University of Kentucky because that fan base said, well, we don't have anything to lose. He's a good coach. He kept some pieces there, and he was able to make them successful. We need to go with that same recipe because I think we have better coaches, a better hotbed of talent. We just need to kind of build on that.
Well, he's done the impossible. He's made Kentucky fans care about football in like December, which is basketball season already. It's already basketball season.
Well, listen, Shannon, we really appreciate the time. You mentioned the recipes. I know you got them all, man. I've yet to get a plate from you that I've not enjoyed. So
I appreciate it.
And I know you didn't get a chance to talk about it, but definitely want to give you kudos to all you do in the community, man.
Thank
just
you,
for the charity, the give back that you do, and even some of the stops that you do at people's houses, just dropping off barbecue.
Sure, man.
It's great to see those D's like that.
Yeah, man. I love the community. You take care of the community will take care of you. That's kind of like my motto. But as I got around, started meeting people, I realized I just love dealing with people because there's always so many like different walks of life that you've never met. I've lived on one side of the tracks for most of my life, but once I go to the other side, I'm like, man, there's a different side, right? It's just so fun to help people and to not see people struggle or just to kind of, like I said, communicate with somebody I've never met that's different walk of life for me. It really is rewarding.
Yeah. One thing we all have in common is enjoying a cookout.
That's right, brother.
Especially when it's relationship ribs. All right, we're going to jump to this break. We'll come back on the other side and wrap up the Gators Online podcast.
Hi, Steve Spurrier here. You know, making a reservation at my restaurant is easier than a Saturday afternoon homecoming game against Vandy. You don't have to call or email. Just go to spurriers.com, hit the reservation button, pick a date, number of guests, and a time. It's so simple, I can do it. In fact, I just did. Maybe I'll see you tonight.
What's up, Gator Nation? Welcome back into the Gators Online Podcast. Appreciate Shannon for joining us in the last segment to talk about what he's been doing with the Florida football team this offseason, specifically on the grill. I think it's pretty cool that he's been able to be that involved with the team and kind of teach them that life lesson. Nick had to skate out on us, so I'm going to take you guys for the rest of the show. Obviously, a lot going on with the Florida football program this week, both on the team front and the recruiting front. Get into some of the team news first before we talk about recruiting. I think you guys saw, and we heard Shannon mention GatorMade and kind of the initiatives that they've had going on. Part of that is, the cooking lessons that he's been providing, but also we saw the team go abroad this week as 16 athletes, including 10 from the football team, were able to go overseas for a service abroad trip to Greece. And if you've been following the Florida football account this week, they've been putting out some videos and photos from that trip, some of the work that they've been doing, certainly doing some charitable work there and giving back to some of the refugees that have been displaced from the war in Ukraine, but also making sure that they take in some of the culture and some of the sites that Athens has to offer. So really cool trip that they put together on GatorMade. Nick had a story about that last week. So definitely encourage you guys to kind of follow along there. We will hopefully have one of those players who took that trip come in here and join us live in studio at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill to talk about how it went. So definitely something to look forward to in the future. One thing that a lot of fans and media members as well have kind of been monitoring as we've gone through the offseason is where things stand with Florida's scholarship count as they welcome new arrivals to campus from the 2022 class. We learned this week, and Nick Del Torre reported at Gators Online Wednesday that there have been 3 players that were cut from the football team. They were for disciplinary issues, but Billy Napier does have that NCAA bylaw that is available for first-year coaches basically to make some roster cuts in order to either get down to 85 or just remove some guys that maybe are not going to be part of their future plans. So that's where we're at right now with 3 of those players. So the Gators right now are approaching 85. I don't think that they're there yet, although I would imagine that Napier and his staff already know how they're going to get down to that number. That doesn't have to happen before fall camp, though. So the Gators are kind of in the clear until we get to August. I don't necessarily think that the cuts may be done, whether that be disciplinary or whether that just be in accordance with this NCAA bylaw. If Napier has to do that to get down to the 85. I mean, there is also the option of potentially gray shirting one of the incoming freshmen. You also have the opportunity, if you're going to maybe take a scholarship away from a guy that used to be a walk-on, maybe a way to provide him some NIL opportunities that would allow him to still pay for school in the fall semester. So there's some different avenues that they can take, but for fans that have been wondering what was going to happen, and clearly based on our numbers on our site Wednesday, this was something that you guys have been monitoring. I think now it's starting to sort itself out. And by the time we reach fall training camp, it'll be a non-story, I think, at that point. Certainly what's not been a non-story is everything on the recruiting front in the month of June. The Gators had another monster weekend last weekend with official visitors. They got more coming in this weekend as they try to take advantage of this month before the dead period kicks in. The Gators got a couple pledges, 2 and 3 days coming off of their official visit weekend, getting a local prospect, Tommy Kinsler out of Ocala, but obviously getting a flip from UCF and Isaiah Nixon, a 4-star edge and a top 200 prospect. That was really big news for the Gators. I think going through these official visit weekends and each one that passes, fans obviously hope to get some commitments from those. Sometimes that's not always in the cards if you're hosting some guys that are waiting to decide or have decision dates already set that they're going to hold out for. But nonetheless, we saw the Gators able to get some momentum this weekend by landing 2 pledges and getting guys to pop that came to campus. So I do think that monitoring where this 2023 class is at, we're going to have a much better sense of where it stands and the potential of it by the time that we get to the end of the summer. Before we get to Jaden Rashada and talk about his recruitment, I did have some fans ask last week for our mailbag at Gators Online about that delayed decision, and more specifically, the sentiment that some fans have about not more commitments being added yet in the 2023 class, or more specifically, some fans feeling like this staff can't quote unquote close. That's not necessarily a narrative that I subscribe to whatsoever. At the same time, I don't think we've seen enough results from them to make any judgments. But you look at what they were able to do in the 2022 cycle, kind of salvaging that class, bringing it all the way to finish with a top 20 ranking. They certainly got some surprises on signing day by landing Shamar James, beating Alabama and Georgia for him, landing Kamari Wilson, beating Georgia for him. I mean, those are 2 top 100 guys that I don't think anybody had Florida landing, probably a month out from that signing day. So this staff has shown the ability to land and close when it was time to. But at the same time, you have to have a guy that's ready to decide or scheduled to announce before you can close on them. And I think that we're simply not at that point yet in the 2023 class. Now, I think this has changed since I wrote this, but when I was asked about where things stood kind of in the summer months, only one of the top 14 players in the state of Florida, according to the On3 rankings, had committed in the 2023 class. One of the top 14. And then out of the top 30 players in Florida, only 6 have committed. I think now that number might be at 7 or 8. But point being, there are just not a lot of guys that have come off the board in state and also around the country that Florida has targeted. And that is honestly just the nature of the beast when you're dealing with top 100 kids, top 50 kids, certainly 5-star kids. They are going to take their time. They're going to wait their recruitment out. And I think especially in the NIL era, for guys that feel like they're going to have an opportunity to land some deals once they sign with the school, they're probably monitoring which programs are taking care of their players in that space and providing the most opportunities. And that's got to be something that will factor into some of those decisions. I think another reason why in the state of Florida specifically, you've seen so many guys that have been uncommitted for so long in this cycle. I think one of those reasons is because of all the first-year coaches in college football, not just in the state with Mario Cristobal and Billy Napier, but just around the league and even nationwide at schools like USC and Oklahoma. You got a lot of coaching changes at premier programs, Oregon. So I think that's maybe created more of a wait and see approach than usual with a lot of top kids. I think that's going to start to shake itself out, however, once some of these bigger fish come off the board, specifically at the quarterback position. We saw Arch Manning make his commitment on Thursday to Texas, and this Sunday, top 50 quarterback Jaden Rashada is going to announce his decision on his grandmother's birthday. Was initially scheduled to announce on June 18th, his father's birthday. Decided to delay that decision, not just to take more time, as he tweeted, but also to take one final official visit. He did make it to Coral Gables this week for a midweek trip. I think the timing of that was definitely better than having him visit Miami on a weekend, because he would have been wrapping up his trip on the day that he was scheduled to announce. And that would not have been good timing, I think, for him or certainly for the Gators. Obviously, this is a highly contested recruitment. I think probably one of the most followed recruitments that we've seen in Florida in some time, which is crazy because he's only been a really primary target for this staff for about 2 months, 2 to 3 months. So it's, in short order, he is kind of garnered the interest and attention of Gator Nation. I think anybody that follows recruiting in this fan base is going to be on pins and needles waiting on his decision Sunday. I still feel good about where Florida stands. I know that anytime Miami gets involved because of how aggressive they've been with NIL, there's some concern there. I don't think that if Florida misses out on Jaden Rashada, it's going to be due to NIL. They've taken care of their players. They've taken care of Anthony Richardson. I don't think that's going to be an issue. It's a matter of Jaden Rashada, according to his deciding factors, finding what's his best playing situation, find the school that makes him most comfortable and where he feels like he can be successful. Now, it's not just potentially an NIL deal that could draw him to Miami. He also has a long-standing relationship with their new coach, Mario Cristobal, who recruited him at Oregon, all the way back dating to September 2021. So while he's gotten to know a lot of new coaches like Billy Napier, like Brian Kelly, like some of the other coaches that have just recently offered him, such as Jimbo Fisher, Mario Cristobal is the one coach that he's known for a long time in his top 5, in addition to Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. So there is some history there. I think also if you're looking at, as he said, where he's going to be most comfortable, just being honest, Coral Gables is a lot more like Pittsburgh, California than Gainesville or College Station. So that's something I think to take into account. But I will say that he's already been to Miami once, Jaden Rashada, and when he went there, the Hurricanes did not start trending for him and become this hot team in his recruitment in the way that Florida did. I mean, Florida, ever since he took that unofficial visit in late May, returned for the second time in as many weeks for his official. They have been the team to beat, according to the On3 recruiting prediction machine, according to other kind of analysts around the country. Florida has been viewed as the team to beat until he decided to delay this decision and take this trip to Miami. So that has certainly thrown a wrench into his recruitment. I don't necessarily feel confident about just coming out and saying, I think he's going to go to Florida. But I do think that they've put themselves in a position probably better than anyone to land his pledge. I do think it will be Florida or Miami that land him. I know Texas A&M, a lot of folks still feel like they could potentially land his pledge, but I think that this is going to come down to Florida or Miami. Chad Simmons, the director of recruiting at On3, had initially reported a couple weeks ago that Jaden prefers to play in the Sunshine State. So I think it's going to come down to those two schools. I think if he really is looking at the playing situation, it's hard to argue that Florida doesn't offer him probably the best path to playing time. So does he feel comfortable enough in the relationship that he's kind of built in short time with this staff and familiarizing himself with Florida? We're going to find out on Sunday. There's not been a time, I think, set for this decision. So that's something to follow along. Make sure you guys stay locked to Corey Bender at Gators Online. He will be on top of this story, on top of this announcement. And for all the Florida fans out there that have been following this feverishly, if the Gators land him on Sunday, this is going to be huge. This is potentially going to change the trajectory of this class. I think that maybe will help the Gators land some targets that maybe they would not land without somebody like Rashada on board. And I think obviously to change maybe the perception of where momentum is at with this class, although they literally just landed 2 pledges. However, if they don't land Jaden Rashada, it's not the end of the world. They've been recruiting this guy for a mere 2 months. It's not like he's been this guy that they've had their eye on for over a year and they've put all their chips into this basket. He is, I'm not trying to downplay the significance of his recruitment, but if he doesn't come, there are other ways that you can bring more quarterbacks in and add them to your roster, whether that's deciding to go out and try and flip someone from another class, whether you wait until the end of the season and go the transfer portal route again and see what quarterbacks have kind of entered after the 2022 season. So the one thing that I found in researching some of the other bump classes that Florida's had with their recent coaches, and by bump class, that is the recruiting class after their transition class where a coach has his first full recruiting cycle to recruit. That's their bump class. And for Florida, you're in a situation now where Billy Napier hasn't even coached a game yet as he's trying to build this. And I wanted to look at where is Florida's class right now? How does it compare to where other bump classes were at before the month of July? Basically before those coaches had even coached a game. And right now the Gators stand at 8 commits. Looking back at the history of Dan Mullen, of Jim McElwain, of Will Muschamp, and even Urban Meyer, right now the Gators are kind of in the same ballpark. They have 8 commits currently heading into Jaden Rashada's decision and heading into the decision from Trayon Webb. So maybe they could be at 10, 9, who knows, but that's where they're at right now. At the end of June, before July, Dan Mullen and Jim McElwain were both at 8 commits. Dan Mullen only actually had 6 guys that had committed to them, 2 pledged to the previous staff. Will Muschamp, before July in his bump class, had the most commits. He had 10. And Urban Meyer in his bump class, which was the 2006 cycle, which ended up being the best class in the country, before July, it only had 5 members in it. So it's not necessarily time to hit the panic button yet. And specifically for the quarterback position, of all those bump classes that I just mentioned, there was only one coach that had a quarterback committed in his bump class before July. Only one. And that coach, Dan Mullen, had that signal caller committed to him at his previous stop in Mississippi State with Jalen Jones. So it's not uncommon for a coach, a first-year coach, to come in and not be able to lock up a quarterback before July. That's obviously when you would like to have a quarterback committed in the summer so that he can recruit for your fall. But it's not a be-all, end-all for a first-year coach. So that's something to keep in mind heading into this decision Sunday. But nonetheless, it is a big one for the Gators. We will have you guys with coverage all throughout the weekend and leading up to and after Jaden Rashada's announcement, as well as wrapping up how the official visits go in Gainesville. So make sure you guys stay tuned to Gators Online. Appreciate Shannon for joining us this week to talk about what he's been up to with the football team. And anytime I can talk food with him, it's always a good time. We will see you guys next week. For Nick Del Torre, I'm Zach Abolverdi.